Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
Gentlemen, that's right. This is another episode of Coffee and Contemplation. And that's okay with me, because I'm your host, Old Heart, a.k.a. Jared, a.k.a. whoever the fuck you want me to be. I am sitting down here with a cup of coffee, trying to ripen up my coconut as best as I can, because honestly, I needed to record a podcast today, dear listener, if you're out there. I've been on my ass for so long, it feels like. I'm just gonna be honest real quick. I've been laid up with what I found out was a herniated disc in my lower back. It's been fucking bugging the heck out of me. It's been dealing with it for a couple of weeks now. And I'd missed a bunch of podcasts. I've been late on a podcast. I know. And honestly, it's been a bit much. So I'm kind of just glad I got the gusto, and I'm here recording this podcast for probably nobody, honestly, but maybe my own psyche. Either way, I'm here, you're here, potentially, and we're gonna talk about something. We're gonna really talk about something. You know what that is, though, folks? We're gonna talk about Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It came out in 1979, and honestly, I just rewatched it, and it definitely is the weirdest Star Trek I think I've seen. The old series, the original series, if you can stand it, and I say that because it has a lot of I don't know. It's just not. Some of the parts about that show do not age well. And I will say that in terms of how the women are received on that show in general. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the motion picture, the 1979 Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Because at one point in time on Old Heart Radio, I made a pact with the dear listeners that I could take anything back to Star Trek. It was me and Yellow Teeth, and we both have a fiery passion for this series. But the movie is kind of crazy. So it released on December 7th, 1979. I had a runtime it's 132 minutes. It's over 2 hours long. You have to like Star Trek to want to watch this movie. Definitely. This is not one your friend's gonna be hey, you heard about this? Let's go check it out. It's yo, I'm already a Trekkie. I'm gonna drag you to this fucking movie. It did make $139 million at the box office off of a $46 million budget. So it was a success to some degree. And honestly, obviously Star Trek is still a huge part of the fandom and sci-fi and pop culture. The Star Trek Discovery, I don't know if anybody's been watching that. I'm caught up. I'm waiting for season 3. It's fucking awesome. And where they're at in that show, and then you see all the history of it, it's phenomenal how much they have built on this idea that was just a shitty series at one point in time. So the cast came back, William Shatner's there, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols, George Takei, Paris Gambetta, and Stephen Persis Kambata, and Stephen Collins. All were the main cast in this movie, and they, just dive right back into their characters. The outfits in this movie, though, are insane. They used to have Star Trek uniforms, right? The original series had the yellows, the blues, the red shirts. Everybody knows Next Generation has uniforms. In this, they're definitely wearing some very 70s looking gear. like it's supposed to be set in the future, space age, all this stuff, and like the get-ups that they're wearing are like they're like backup singers in a fucking disco band. It's kind of weird. But you know, whatever, you just kind of jump right into it. Apparently though, so the original series ran for 3 seasons, right? And back even as far as 1968, Roddenberry had first proposed the idea of a feature film at like a sci-fi convention. Of course, because that's like where you get everybody to like throw out like random ideas, man. Like at the conventions, you just like you like ask them a question that puts them in a corner, and then they're like, "Oh my god, yeah, a feature film would be awesome. Yeah, of course, we'd bring everybody back." But apparently, it took a while to get this off the ground. It took a while to even get somebody to commit to writing it at some points in time. They had a list of people that they were looking for, because if like around 1976, Paramount finally approved kind of an $8 million budget to like start working on this. And so they were looking at all sorts of people, like George Lucas. Oh shit, shoutouts to Evil L, shoutouts to Uncaged, shoutouts to Mooner6, shoutouts to Castle Roll, my fellow co-host, shoutouts to anybody listening out there, you're awesome. Shoutouts to the Are You Afraid podcast. Are you afraid of Are You Afraid of the Dark? A local Olympia podcast. They're fucking awesome. They're hilarious. They're doing like live podcasts at conventions now. It's fucking rad. So shout outs to them. Anyway, so Star Trek the Motion Picture. So they were like looking up, like they were trying to get George Lucas to write the fucking project. They were trying to get Francis Ford Coppola to do it. They had a list of other names like James Goldman. Even at one point in time, I read that fucking Ray Bradbury had pitched some ideas. I mean, it sounds kind of like they were really trying to get like the top tits to get on this project. Let's see. It was finally a treatment, like a 20-page treatment from a couple of blokes that was called Planet of the Titans. That was sort of like one of the first things that got eked out. And it was essentially Kirk and his crew encounter beings they believe to be the mythical Titans and travel back millions of years in time, accidentally teaching early man to make fire. So like the ultimate cardinal sin of the Federation. Like, right? Like you're interfering with a species, your own. Anyway, that movie did not obviously happen. That shit's fucking crazy. Although the studio accepted the treatment, I just don't even know. I mean, like, where'd that movie happen? I don't know. I wish we had that, but apparently that was never like a thing. So they tried to like sort of take Star Trek back to its roots a little bit. And anyway, this movie, so the motion picture, what actually happens is they encounter a giant AI system. What they don't know is an AI system. But at the beginning of the movie, it destroys a couple of Klingon ships, and the Federation goes to investigate. And Kirk just shows up, Admiral. He's an admiral in this movie. He shows up, and he's just like, fuck it, I'm taking control of the Enterprise. We're going out there. I have the experience. Everybody just kind of comes together, right? It's fucking weird. It obviously doesn't really make sense how they all come together, but they do. Anyway, so they go and investigate, and it's kind of cool because it's this like giant machine floating through space, coming back to Earth. Because what it turns out is it's one of the early Voyager satellites from the 20th century. That is finally, it got like, I don't know, somehow got so much information that it became aware. And so, the end of the movie, Stephen Collins' character, Decker, who is like, he's the dad from Seventh Heaven. I don't know if anybody gets that reference. But he basically gives his body to the machine so it can become a new life form. And it becomes this like hybrid machine man. It's fucking intense. But like the dated 70s effects really make it kind of weird. So like the lighting is really crazy. You have a lot of like greens and reds and blues, and like you have just a lot of color, but it's all super cheesy. Like it just looks super cheesy. The acting is obviously what you'd expect from the original Star Trek crew. It is fantastic and too much and too little all at once. The movie itself, like I said, apparently it took a while to get it going, but eventually it took off, and it made enough money to keep things interesting. I mean, obviously Star Trek grew into a huge cult of people. I mean, I'm not a Trekkie. I'm not one of those weird folks, but like, I love Star Trek. But you know, I can put it down. I guess is what I'm saying. Some people don't put it down, and this movie definitely helped usher in the era of the Trek. I will say that. Filming of the motion pictures, like the first scene was filmed on August 7th, 1978, which is kind of cool. I mean, I wonder what like the energy was on that set, because everybody knew that they were making magic. Like that's the thing. Like people wanted the Star Trek movie, and in that funky, weird 70s environment where everybody was probably like a little high on something or other, it was probably a good time to film. I mean, you're just filming like random space shit, right? I mean, how hard could it be? We've all seen Star Trek, or at least parts of Star Trek. They don't really go for the throat when it comes to like, you know, shittily acted scenes. They keep it all, baby. Maybe not. Apparently, the planet Vulcan setting in the movie was created using a mixture of on-location photography at a hot springs in Yellowstone and set recreation. So they were kind of like shooting on sets as well as on locations for some things. That's kind of cool. I don't know. This movie it's just fantastic. It's like I said, if you're laid up with a herniated disc, I would highly recommend watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That being said, that's another episode of Coffee and Contemplation. I hope that you listened to me ramble about this, because honestly, why the fuck not? If you didn't listen, that's okay. You could have started it and stopped it, and then we could have all moved on with our lives. But I'm rambling still. So, dear listener, I want you to go out and use your brain for good. Every day's a great day to ripen up that coconut on something you may or may not know. Sharpen that tool. And honestly, have patience, have love, have compassion, and go out there and use your stick to keep it on the ice.